Victoria City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
With him, I have to flag to you that I had food poisoning last night and I was doing it at both ends between 1 and 2 o'clock. So if I suddenly rush out, I'll be back. Bud's talk is going to divide into two halves. First half is like a broad sweep of various things that can help you protect yourself online, etc., and how to get more out of your online life. And the second half will be focusing very much on the EMPs, electromagnetic pulses, which can be done as weapons or can be done as a nuclear bomb sets off an EMP, and how you can protect being bombed back into the Stone Age by an EMP. So it's going to be very informative. If you take away 2 or 3 things to do from this talk, that you'll actually action, then that is gold. You'll actually have come away with something useful for your online life, etc. So join me on the stage, Bud. Let's do it. Now, I should hype him up a bit. This guy was, he was in the US military for ages. He is a genuine online expert on cyber, trying to protect cyber hacking, etc., like that. And he predicted to me, there's going to be so many companies hacked. Sure enough, Medicare in Australia had their records hacked. 10 million customer records, hacked. And we're going to hear more about that sort of thing, right? Because they're not putting in the effort and money into protecting the client's records and stuff.
Technical, but not with mics apparently. Yeah, there's a lot of web security issues. We'll talk about several of them today for your devices, for your online cloud services. So hopefully this will be something you can take something away from and improve your life and better security of your devices and all your information.
All right. We were so ugly they turned down the lights on us. So, this is some of the things we'll be covering in the first part where I'll be on stage with Bud. Questions of VPNs, password managers, Wi-Fi security, electronic inheritance, how to pass on your electronic information, very important, can be very important, passwords and etc., in a safest manner as possible, and some other bits and pieces. So, on with the show.
Okay, this is going to be presented from assuming you don't know anything. We're not intending this to be a very complex brief. This is supposed to be informative, and we can ask, we'll have a questions and answers section after. Please hold your questions until then. We're going to start with VPNs. So, how many people have a VPN? How many people use it regularly? Almost a third, about a third of the room. That's very good. Let's explain what a VPN is, and Ren, jump in at any time. So VPNs are connections you use to connect to the internet. Different locations. Oh, I don't want to get in the screen way. We all have access to the internet, but by default, your connection to the internet makes you very vulnerable to other people being able to see what you're doing, where you're coming from, and potentially all the data that you're sending to and from a recipient on the other end. VPNs serve for several functions. We'll talk briefly about them. Mostly it protects you from anyone getting to see your information is the primary reason for having a VPN. The way it does that is by encrypting the data from your device to an endpoint. The endpoint could be another business on the other side of the world. It could be a server, could be a friend of yours in the USA. There's many different ways to configure a VPN.
And so, as far as the internet's concerned, you can be as far as the internet is concerned, I'm in Australia right now. You know, that's where my VPN is pointed towards. And just today, somebody's saying, you know, I can't access British things because, you know, the BBC doesn't like me being in a different country to England. Well, VPN, as far as they're concerned, you're in England, right?
Exactly. There's times you don't want to show that you're in Thailand. There's times you're required to be, say, in the U.S. in order to get to a U.S. website. By doing a VPN to the USA, for example, when someone tracks you to see where you're coming from, it appears you're in the USA. So when you try to go to those websites that require you to be in the U.S., they see you as coming from the U.S., and you can now access those websites.
And the one I use, by the way, is Surfshark. I find anybody else use Surfshark as their VPN? I find it very well done, very well set up. If you can we put my code in for the website, because I get credit for anybody who joins via my code. I can get some free months, right? So I think it's about $50 US for the year. So I think that's great value myself.
So what we mentioned so far is number one here of the main benefits. One of the other benefits is not just the privacy, but your internet service provider may be tracking you along with all kinds of other people on the internet, and they want to know where you're going, what you're doing on the internet. Everyone from Google to government agencies. Your ISP has the ability to give that information to all these companies and government agencies. Let's say a country has a certain policy that it's illegal to do certain activities, or a company just wants to track you for whatever reason. Using a VPN gives you a layer of protection where they can't see what you're sending back and forth. That's getting more and more important today.
Also, anybody here use PayPal or would like to? PayPal? Yeah, well, PayPal does not service Thailand at the moment for some reason. But, of course, as far as PayPal's concerned, I'm in Australia, so no problem.
Another benefit of using a VPN is, let's say you're sitting in a coffee shop and you don't have access to your device, don't have an internet data plan. So you connect to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi, and you're great. You got a free Wi-Fi, you're accessing it. Well, everyone else in that coffee shop and nearby can fairly easily see all the data you're sending on the internet if you're not using a VPN. So again, I can't say this strong enough. Ren will back me up on this. You don't want to use public Wi-Fi, period.
No, we're going to get into that. But it's actually very cheap, and they're very simple to use. You set them up and they're automatic. You start up your computer, the VPN kicks in. Really, really worth having. Of course, Bud put me onto this a couple of years ago.
The software is available with a lot of services, security software. Maybe you're with your antivirus. It gets packaged with things. If you do buy it separately, we're talking, a few $100 for the year. It's very inexpensive for that particular software, especially if you buy it in a bundle. It's very little extra cost. It allows you to connect to different places in the world. There's hundreds of places around the world. There's times you may want to go watch, just to watch Netflix, for example. This is a basic thing a lot of people are familiar with, so I'll use that to explain. There are certain country code policies. Maybe if I go to my Netflix while I'm in Thailand, I get one set of movies. And I go to Netflix in the U.S., I'll get a completely different listing of movies because the laws in the U.S. say these movies are licensed to put on Netflix in America, and these movies are licensed to be put in Thailand. So there's many different reasons.
Who uses Netflix here? Who's subscribed to Netflix? Yeah. So this is a very useful tip to get more out of Netflix. Should we move on to that?
Okay.
And this is just a little diagram of how it can help in many different situations.
One of the other risks to using Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is that they're susceptible to someone getting on your network, even if you're not at a coffee shop or somewhere you're trying to connect to. Wi-Fi's on the phones will automatically try to connect to any known network, so it's constantly scanning as long as you have Wi-Fi on or Bluetooth on for devices it's previously connected to. It identifies what it previously connected to by a security ID called an SSID and a password. So if I go to Starbucks coffee shop and I have a password on my device, once I go there once, it's saved on my phone. I don't have to log in every time. But if someone knows me and they want to get access to my device, they know I go to Starbucks, all they have to do is log into the same network, then create a hotspot with the same name and password, and whenever I'm within range of that device, my phone will automatically connect to their phone and let them see what's on my device.
And there's an astounding proportion of phones hacked in Thailand.
It's something like 96% of phones have, 96 to 98% of phones have been vulnerable just in the month of November 2022. I had some stats on this.
And Thais are notoriously lax in how they use them and stuff. So one of the things to take away from this morning is who's on the Holiday Inn public Wi-Fi right now? Who? Yeah. Is really you don't want to use public Wi-Fi. It's just too easy to hack. Do we have the video of the 12-year-old hacking it?
Yes, we do. I want to play one thing, just one brief part first.
Sure.
Could you click play on this? This is showing your settings on an Android phone. Click up where it says Wi-Fi Plus. If you display that, there's a toggle switch on and off, and that will disable your device from automatically logging into local Wi-Fi networks without your knowledge. So I suggest you disable that Wi-Fi Plus feature on your Android devices. And there's a video, I believe it's the large video in the video folder we'd like to play now. Bear with us for a moment, it takes a moment to load. This is a video of a young child showing how easy it is to hack. No special skills or tools are really needed today. Most of the software is available to download for free, and you could figure this out in a 3-minute video on YouTube of how to do this. We're just giving you some warnings of why you don't want to use public Wi-Fi.
One hacker from Texas is also raising awareness about growing cyber threats, and he's only 12 years old. Ruben Paul is a 6th grader from Austin. He hacks household items to demonstrate how they can be exploited to spy on or even harm people. David Begnaud recently met the self-proclaimed cyber ninja who showed him how smart toys can be turned into listening devices.
Hi, everybody.
Ruben Paul is 12 years old, and he's helping to lead the conversation on cybersecurity.
It's pretty dangerous.
Presenting in the Netherlands.
We shoot the drone.
Advising a tech conference in Singapore.
That was an amazing presentation.
And wowing a crowd full of executives in Texas.
It is important that we need to reinvent cybersecurity because obviously what we have invented so far is clearly not working.
This cyber ninja, as he calls himself, has a 2nd-degree black belt in Kung Fu, and he's on a mission to show how hacking is child's play.
If a 12-year-old can do it, what makes it that somebody is a skilled, actual cyber terrorist? What makes it that they can't do it? This Bluetooth is going into new autonomous cars, autonomous drones. It's going into medical devices.
Paul says that the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connections that we use almost every day are extremely vulnerable to hacking.
I'll never connect to a public Wi-Fi that I don't know.
Really?
Somebody can just hack into that Wi-Fi network and poison it.
He showed me firsthand how a hacker's poison can spread from a Wi-Fi signal.
I successfully know your password.
How you know my password?
And have hacked you. Your login was david.com.
Yep, let's bleep that out. Wow. So, call me gullible. You got me.
It took seconds. He had my Twitter username and password using a fake page that he'd cloned. after I connected to his public Wi-Fi network.
It's that easy. So in other words, if I was sitting at a Starbucks, I went to sign into Twitter,
Yes.
I put it in, they got it.
Now, staying in touch is easy and fun.
Paul also hacked CloudPet's teddy bear. It uses Bluetooth.
So you can see hacking using your Wi-Fi or your Bluetooth. You have to use it. It's not that it's not a problem. You need to be aware of the risks. Don't connect to public Wi-Fi unless it's a last resort. I suggest you use a data plan on your phone. It's safer. But use a VPN. If you use a VPN, the type of hacking you see here won't happen. Right?
Yes. Just generally, you want to get a good data plan and just use that. And there are so unlimited internet. And there are, who has a computer at home, right? Besides who has a Wi-Fi thing that they find goes very slow sometimes, right? Very, very slow, especially during office hours, because you're sharing the cable traffic with offices and stuff. My Wi-Fi connection only really works well on Sundays when the offices are shut. So, we're doing the hotspot thing later?
It's associated.
Okay, so what you can do is you can get an unlimited data plan on your phone, and you can use that as a hotspot for your computer, which means you don't need Wi-Fi, right? And it's faster and maybe even safer under certain circumstances. So yeah, now I don't know how to switch because you've all got different phones. Go to YouTube, which we're going to talk about now, and search, for instance, set up hotspot on Android phone or whatever it is, right, or Galaxy or whatever it is, and that will teach you through. So we're going to actually teach you. Who has never used YouTube at all? Anyone? One person. Okay, I thought there was two, so that shows you what I know. Bud.
Who not just uses YouTube, but regularly knows how to scan and save channels so that you can go back to the same user on a regular basis. It's a great tool using YouTube. It's got a great search engine. You can search anything you want. And somebody's probably loaded several videos on it. But there are a lot of other platforms that are similar. We'll brief on that shortly. Almost all of those other medias use the same process where you have a website. It's called a platform. And within that platform, many people can create their own channels. You can search and find an individual article of how to build how to grow tomatoes, and then you can also search once you find a user you like and save that user as your favorites or someone you want to track and subscribe to their channels. So the concept is the same across many, many social media platforms.
Oh, I want to say a little bit more about hotspots. So if you go to your service provider and you say how much, and you can search the different service providers about how much for unlimited internet on your phone. Now, I decided I was going to switch to another internet provider that gave cheaper unlimited internet on the phone. So I went to my service provider and I said, I want to transfer, because you can transfer your phone number. In this case, I could transfer my phone number to the other provider. And then before they transferred it, they phoned me up and said, why are you transferring to another provider? And I said, I need unlimited internet on my phone. And they said, well, we can do that for you for 10 months for $200 a month. And I thought, beauty, I'm staying with you. So now every month I'm paying $200 and hope they don't notice. So you can get better deals by just threatening to go to somebody else.
That's a good point. As I mentioned, it's safer to use a data plan on your phone where you don't need some other media to get to the internet, such as a Wi-Fi connection. Generally, those packages are bundled with other phone services, so they get less expensive. They are getting a little more pricey, and you need to be careful if you buy a data plan that you know the details of it. It's getting more common now that they limit your speed, they limit the volume of data you can get, say 50 gigabyte per month. After that, they'll slow you way down, so that becomes a problem. The older plans, if you've had a phone here for several years, they're grandfathered in, so your rates are a third, and you have much faster internet connections that don't change regardless of how much data you download per month. So be careful when you would try to get a data plan that you understand it well. Right here is what we're going to do is a quick walkthrough for logging into YouTube and how to find a channel or a topic. And then if you wish, you could save a subscription for this user. You want to play that video? Okay. Again, it's very, very simple. You go to Google or whatever search engine you use, type in YouTube, click on the page to go to YouTube, then put in whatever your topic is, in this case, Patio City Expat Club. Do a search, and when you see what you're looking for, click on it. That'll bring you to that page. It may not be the exact video you want yet. Click on the video section and look through that. If you knew a date or more detail, you can fill that in on the top line under Patio Expat Club and jump right to a video or a topic on that channel.
Also, you see this little search, this little magnifying glass here? If you click on that and you put it in, say you love my talks, right? You can put Ren Lexander there, and it will bring up the videos. It won't take you outside the channel. It will search videos just within, in this case, the Pattaya City Expat Club channel, right? So that's a really useful tool to know. For instance, we had a brilliant talk on prostate and stuff, and every guy should watch it a couple of months ago. And you could put, prostate up there and got to bring up a video. And subscribe to the channel. It's a one way to support the Pattaya City Expat Club is subscribe and like the videos, etc., etc.
You can, I'm not going to contradict you, but you notice there's a sign-in button in the top corner. Once you sign in, it'll keep all your favorites, it'll keep all your subscriptions very easy, accessible. If you're someone who wants to be autonomous and doesn't really want to be known, all these websites kind of encourage you to have subscriptions and sign in, but all of them have ways around it, so you can still access the sites without having to log in or have membership if you're concerned about someone knowing what you're doing.
And of course, it's owned by Google, so they want you to have a Google account to have a YouTube channel, etc. Move on.
Just covering something interesting you brought up in previous meetings is that Google is the largest search engine in the world. We're going to talk about search engines in a moment, but the second largest search engine in the world is YouTube. So those are very big access points to gather information.
And really, YouTube is one of the greatest teaching things ever. It's just unbelievable. You can learn about anything, and it's explained visually, and it's not just reading it out of a book. No matter how obscure something you want to know, or if you want to know tech subjects, like why I should use a VPN or whatever, there'll be some video on it.
Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to try to explain to you the difference between what a browser is and what a search engine is. These are commonly confused. They're two different pieces of software or two different services is a clearer way to describe it. The browser is a way to get to the internet. It's a gateway to go to the internet. A search engine is an indexed listing of everything on the internet so you can find what you're looking for. You install a piece of software on your device that's called a browser. Within each browser, you have an option to select what search engine you want to use to find things on the internet. There's many different search engines. Google is very common. DuckDuckGo is another very common one. And I'll run through a quick video of how to change those settings if you prefer to use a different search engine within a browser.
So there are those of us who knew that Google Search, which was the first Google product, Google Search, and then they developed a browser called with Google Chrome, and now it seems so integrated you feel like it's just one product, but it's not.
Yeah, there are hundreds of different browsers, maybe 20 that are very, very common and popular, and there are maybe 15 widespread search engines that are commonly used around the world. slightly out of order. But,
No, let's go back. Don't worry about that for now.
so, could you play
So-
this video before we go on?
Yeah, sure, please.
So I'm just demonstrating you're doing a search of the internet through your browser, and if you go on any browser, you go to the settings. It's located in different places in each browser. Sorry for the poor quality here on the screen. You go to settings, and it'll display the ability to change whatever search engine you're currently using. And it's not just one. You could use 5 different search engines. If it doesn't find what you're looking for on the first, it'll go to the second, go to the third. So you can define the order in which it'll search different search engines for your whatever you're looking for.
So you put me onto DuckDuckGo as a search engine. Why is that a good one?
DuckDuckGo doesn't track your usage as much as Google does. So it's safer, you're more anonymous. It's a little less biased, in my opinion.
It doesn't like stream you to what you think that you want to know. It doesn't have the AI saying you click on right-wing propaganda, so I'm going to send you to right-wing propaganda, that sort of
Correct. The AI is less directing your searches.
Oh, interesting.
The algorithms behind it are a little more unbiased. With
And you put,
DuckDuckGo.
in terms of the browser, you put me onto the Brave browser, and that it tracks how much time it's saving you, because that, they're not letting all these things be tracked, and it's blocked like about 811,000 people who want to track me and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting browser.
Brave is a good one. They all have pros and cons. Each one is slightly different. DuckDuckGo actually has their own browser, just like Google. It's only available on the Android platform right now. But it's a good browser as well. So Iridium is a very a more secure version of Chrome. I'd recommend Iridium or DuckDuckGo on Androids, and Brave is a second option.
Yeah, so I use DuckDuckGo, but occasionally I want to know what the Google search is. So I go to google.com and I do the search from there in Google.
That's true. Nothing's stopping you from, on this top line, putting in google.com and going to google.com while you're in a DuckDuckGo browser. They're separate entities completely. We referred to how you use YouTube a few minutes ago. I'm just curious. Right here I have 6 common social media platforms that are very similar to YouTube. Odyssey, virtually identical to YouTube. Locals is more Twitter type. Rumble, again, is a combination of entertainment, news, and lots of media. Gab, again, the same. SoundBits is a little more not video, but audio. Any kind of stories you want to hear, audio.
Yeah,
And
especially music on SoundCloud,
Yeah, LinkedIn is more business related. But again, if you understand how to use YouTube, these are all very, very similar, and hundreds of others are out there as well. So don't think you have to go to YouTube. That's your only choice. You have many choices. Some are better than others for different type of social media or news. It's your choice. I'm sorry, go back to one more. Of these choices on the wall, let me just get a show of hands who's used these or who would be interested to see a video, because I have videos I can show you after in question and answers. I'll only do one because we're limited on time, but Odyssey, anybody use that? Locals? Rumble? Gab? LinkedIn? A lot of people use LinkedIn, okay, and SoundCloud. Okay, we'll show LinkedIn if anybody requests it in the question and answer after the session, because you can view it without logging in, and when you go to the website, it appears the first thing it tells you is log in. That's not necessarily true.
Didn't know that. All right, subject dear to my heart. Right, who has a thumb drive here? Who has some sort of thumb drive, portable thumb drive? All right, everybody know what I mean by a thumb drive, right? Tiny thing you carry around? No? All right. I'll pull one out later. A thumb drive is a very little thing. You can put it on a key ring, and it can have like 128 gigs of data on it, right? You can carry it around. I've actually got one. Anyway, I'll show it to you later. So if anybody doesn't know, I'll show you one later. Now here's the thing. A lot of the most valuable, like I own a little bit of crypto and that sort of thing, you want people to inherit your stuff, but you don't want them to inherit it before you die, right? So the question is, how can I, and by the way, this is a particular bugbear with a lawyer I know, where the woman, you know, some woman has been married to this guy for a long time, and she might inherit everything, but she doesn't have the money to pay for food because he hasn't made provision for her, right? Because, you know, it can take 8 months or more to do the probate, and so she can access the money. So one of the things you can do, you get a thumb drive, you put the electronic information in it, you secure that thumb drive with BitLocker. It's actually pretty easy to do. And again, there'll be a video on this on YouTube for sure, how to secure a thumb drive with BitLocker. You have a password, okay? Series of words. You give most of that to your lawyer in a sealed envelope, and you give one word to tack onto the end to your whether it's the person who's going to organize the will, the executor or executrix, or to your girlfriend or whatever it is, who you want to have the information, but only after you've died. So most of the password to the lawyer, an extra word to tack onto the end with the trusted non-lawyer person. So when you die, she can get the envelope, or he can get the envelope with most of the password on, and add on their word. So then they can access your thumb drive with all your passwords and electronic information, and you know, however much information that may be. This is about as good a way as it gets for passing on this sort of information when you die, okay? I've done this. It's a really, really, really worthwhile and important thing to do, okay? So,
from the technical side, whether you're using BitLocker or another encryption, there are several. That's fine. You can use whichever one you like. But the concept is the file is encrypted. No one can, even if you lose your USB drive or wherever you stored it, they can't read it. It's still encrypted. You need a password to unlock it so people can access the information on that file.
The lawyer, do not give most of the password to your business advisor, because there's been many cases where the business advisor phones up the wife and say, you want to run away together? We can get all this money off him, and they take off, right? Seriously. Did anybody, I want to share this story. This woman was married to this Thai guy. Thai man was married. She wasn't actually officially married, but she, they had 3 kids together, and he won like 6 million baht in the lottery. You heard this story? And so he transferred it into her account, and then suddenly it was like, suddenly he discovered she was having an ongoing affair with his brother, and she took off with the money and his brother. And the police said, you know, and she was saying, well, I'm not really married. And the kids are going, are you kidding, Mum? Of course we are married. You live with him, you had the kid. And anyway, the police said, we can, you know, she's stolen the money. And he said, well, what's going to happen? Well, we'll arrest her and put her in prison and stuff. And he just let her have the money instead of arresting her and having the mother thrown in jail. Wow, what a story. But anyway, yeah, electronic securitization of your inheritance, very, very important. Wow, she was generous.
So as things get more digital, the legal side of digital hasn't really been thought of or planned out very well. Cryptocurrencies is another good example. If you have a wallet that you're keeping your cryptocurrencies in, that's basically an encrypted file. You need a password to unlock it. Same concept. But anybody who has access to that password has access to your money. If you have a will and you put a code number in to give to someone that you want to be a recipient of your funds, you might as well put 6 gold bars in a bag and hand it to the lawyer, because you're doing the same thing. So again, follow Ren's advice about splitting up the password between the recipients and the legal system, lawyers, whoever's in charge of your estate.
Just a time out. Who's finding this very informative and worth knowing, right? You know, this is stuff you really need to know. And of course, there will be this video on YouTube, and you can go back, go over it, revise the knowledge, okay?
Again, another aspect of using an encrypted file is where do you store all these passwords? A lot of people put them in an Excel file and maybe password protect it. They'll write it on a piece of paper. They'll keep it in their head, which is usually a very simple password that's easier to crack. Sticky note under the keyboard. Someone breaks in the house, they have access to it immediately. All these methods are not as good as having an actual encrypted file on your device or in the cloud. They're both available.
Or on a thumb drive you plug in when you want to use it.
Better yet is to have it on a device that is not always connected to your laptop or your phone, so that if someone hacks that device, they don't have immediate access to that file. I'm going to show a couple examples here of services that you can install that allow you to very easily encrypt your files. And basically, you're creating a folder on your device, or as Ren mentioned, it could be on an external drive. It's still connected to your computer. And by doing this in an encrypted manner, you need a password to open that file. You can put legal documents, financial records. I suggest anything sensitive on your computer should be kept in this file. The first program we'll show you is one I use. It can be stored locally on your computer, or you can store it in the cloud where it's still encrypted in the cloud, but I only need to put my password, save it on this one location, and then I can access it on my tablets, my Android phones, my PCs. So I'm just updating one database. I'll go ahead and click play on the first video here. So what we're doing here is just showing you what a password manager program looks like. You enter individual entries, and again, I apologize for the low resolution here, but this is showing Facebook, my K-Bank, other accounts. You create your own accounts here. Within each one of these, you put your username and password in them. Again, this whole file is encrypted. It's very easy to search and save all the information you need in one location. You never have to worry about remember any of these passwords again. I've used these kind of programs for 15 years now. It's required with cybersecurity specialists because I have hundreds of passwords.
And one of the things I thought was very interesting is with these things, what you do is, for instance, you copy the password and you paste it in, right, when you need to access things. Because typing it in, if they've hacked your computer and they've got keystroke software on it, they will get your password that way, just because you type it in. So copying it and pasting it is much, much better.
Also, these programs are designed to clear the clipboard from cut and paste, because there's even a way they can get it out of the RAM, the temporary memory, while you are actually cutting and pasting. So it's much more secure, since you don't have to know what any of these passwords are, because they can be auto-generated, and you're auto-pasting them in, as I'll show you in a second. They can be very long, complex things. I haven't read one of my own passwords in 8 years. I couldn't tell you what they are. The only password I need to remember is the one that opens this folder. That I have to know, because if you lose that, that's like losing your crypto password. So that you want to keep safe and memorize that.
It's worse than losing your crypto password, because you've got recovery phrases with crypto, right?
That's true. Well, and you can have recovery phrases with this in a way too, yes. So let me just explain what Ren was just talking about. Once you have information in one of these password management programs, in this case, I'm clicked on LinkedIn in my KeyPass program.
We've been hacked.
So there's two ways. Once you have an entry into your KeyPass program, you can do things. You can do cut and paste for each individual field, username and password, or you can do an autocomplete, which I'm hoping to show you in a moment. You click one button, Control V, and it will automatically fill in your username and your password into that web page, whether it be Google or your bank or whatever. You don't have to worry about mistyping. You don't have to worry about someone seeing it. It's very easy to manage that way.
Well, can we
Yeah.
save those till afterwards? Is that okay? Is it very urgent? Yeah, we try to have the questions at the end, but as we're waiting, waiting for the thing.
Oh, that's okay. I'll wait till the end. I'll wait.
So
Good.
I'll mention one other thing while we're waiting. One program that I find very useful, I mentioned on the bottom of the screen, called KeyPass, K-E-E-P-A-S-S. It's free, it's open source code, it's updated regularly. There's nothing hidden in there. There's no one else that has access to that. It's not in the cloud, it's on your particular device. You can save it to the local file or USB drive, as Ren mentioned. And
Like
then,
my favorite word, free, right?
yeah. And we're going to play this video now just to show you how we log into this LinkedIn account with this password program that's in this window. So I just open this up and I click here. If it'll play.
Perform auto type is what it says.
Yeah.
Play the video. This one.
This one should have been. Anyhow, normally you'll either click Control V or click this button, and you'll see it'll fill that in and press enter for you. Big time saver. As a network engineer, I type in the 4 or 5 devices a minute, jumping around the network to check things. I would never be able to function without this service. As I started to say, the KeyPass program is my recommendation. If you happen to have an antivirus program, AVG, Kaspersky, Nord, something like that, check. You may already have this feature built into your application, and suggest getting used to using it. It's a very big security risk. Most people have very easy to remember passwords. You know, some small phrase, my house 123 question mark. Something that you remember makes it very easy to hack. The ability to hack into passwords is based on how complex they are, how many letters they are, letters, big letters, small letters, numbers, special characters. When you use longer encryption, it's harder to break in. Your average 15-letter password now, it takes seconds for a major hacker, a major AI, let's just say a powerful AI or an advanced hacker to crack it. A much more complex password might take 3 weeks, 2 days, it varies. But hackers are very, very lazy. If they can't get it in 1 minute, they don't. Unless they know you got $1 million, they're not going to waste their time on it.
As Bud and I, we say things like, you want to be the hardest kid on the block to hack, because they'll move on, or the hardest kid in the city to hack, because they'll move on. Or, so they'll move on to somebody who's not so hard. We can't play that video? Oh, it's not a video.
The video would be in the folder then, excuse me, if it's not showing there.
I think we covered that pretty well.
But yeah, we're good. And this misaligned a little bit, but the next thing we were going to talk on briefly is email security recommendations. So a lot of programs say they're secure. Almost all of them say in some way they have security on their email. That's a gray area. A lot of them say they're secure, meaning it can be secure. Most of them have a very low security setting because it uses less processing power for the service provider. If they set it low and it's more reliable, the more complex passwords, complex encryption require more processing time, and they don't want to do that. So unless you tell the service provider that you want high-level encryption, it's most likely set to a low level. There's some easy settings. In this case, I'm just pointing out the settings on an Outlook page where you can change the port and change the type of encryption to a higher level. Fairly easy. It varies depending on your device and your email service. Every service is different. Let's use Gmail, for example. If you go to a search on the internet and you say Gmail settings, how to configure, and it'll show you some very easy to follow instructions on how to set your encryption to a higher level. And it varies drastically depending on your service, your operating system, and what software you're viewing the email on. If you are watching your, if you are using a web page, log into a web page to get your email, that's not as secure, but that's common. A lot of people do that. Be aware that you are taking risks if you're not using a VPN to go to that web page and back. It's possible people can see the data that you're viewing on your page. These are the recommended servers, email systems. Proton Mail seems to be rated the highest. I've had that for several years, but all these others on the top are good. The reason the most common ones are not recommended is partly because they are most common. They're the most hacked, and when they hack one user, they've hacked tens of thousands of users. They're also not as secure. Ironically, the most secure protocol has been around since like 1998, but the newer protocols since then are less secure. Don't ask me why. They decided people don't need privacy on emails since then. So unless you're using a PGP protocol, which most of these do not, you're not as secure as the the recommended list. That is it for the first presentation.
So that's time to have a glass of water. How are we going? Half an hour, great. So this anybody who doesn't know what a thumb drive is, this is one way thumb drives can look. Okay, like those are two different thumb drives. Okay. Yes. There you go. Kingston is a thumb drive. Okay. Anybody else want to see what a thumb drive looks like?
Sometimes called a flash drive.
Flash drive. Yep. So now I am going to retire. Now what's going to come is this very dramatic subject of electromagnetic pulses and power outages and stuff, and how those can compromise your devices and your electronic information. So it's a very important topic. We had, when Bud did his first part on it, it was like, it was almost a record number of questions. I think people were fascinated and they'd never heard of this. We got the video on fairly soon.
I don't think I brought the video for that one with me today.
All right. Well, I now retire on my electronic laurels and hand completely over to Bud.
Actually, if you have the previous week's video, 2 weeks ago I did a presentation. That video is probably there. Ren, you might be able to help him find it. Let me start with this talk. So Ren's focusing on, he started to mention what I'm going to talk on. EMP is one piece of it. It's an electromagnetic pulse, which causes power outages, causes damage to a lot of electronic devices. That's a part of what I'm talking about. But the main focus is a more general category of how to prepare for and what to expect during and after long-term power outages. With the energy shortages we are having around the world, this is becoming more and more likely to be severely impact people.
A panel of experts at the Universal Peace Federation.
Actually, that is one of the videos we could use, but it's a little bit longer. How many people have experienced power outages in this room? Power out for a few hours, right? Everybody, I'm sure. No major inconvenience, little things.
Feel a thing. Powerful electromagnetic waves.
Well, that's the video, or that's one, although it's displayed pretty poorly.
One of the most wired nations in the
Yes,
world.
let's start that from the beginning, but could you make it a little bit smaller or something? It's really low resolution for some reason.
The nuclear warhead will detonate high above the Earth's surface. And people on the ground will not feel a thing. Powerful electromagnetic waves destroy electrical circuits. One of the most wired nations in the world will go dark. This plane is especially designed to survive an EMP. It may be one of the only means of communication you, as Commander-in-Chief, will have to your military forces. In a matter of months, our 21st century technology-driven world will be catapulted back to a non-electrified time. This is the worst-case scenario, but one that could happen on your watch. With the fate of millions resting in your hands, will you be prepared for the aftermath? To make the right decisions, you need to know more about electromagnetic pulses, how they work, the damage they incur, what you should not be scared of, and what you should. To help you separate the physics from the fiction is a briefing led by physicist Richard Muller.
An EMP bomb is a bomb that's designed to go above the atmosphere. And you're releasing suddenly all this huge energy. A few percent of that energy is in the form of gamma rays. Gamma rays are essentially X-rays that have much greater energy. You take an X-ray, which is maybe 10,000 volts of energy, and instead give it 1,000,000 volts of energy, and we call it a gamma ray. These gamma rays then spread out. They'll hit to the horizon.
When the gamma rays hit the atmosphere, they bump into nitrogen and oxygen molecules, knocking off electrons and creating electric current in space.
Electrons moving through a wire, what we call an electric current. Electrons moving through space are an electric current in space.
As this current moves through the Earth's magnetic field, it emits microwaves that strike the surface with an intense surge of power.
That's what makes it so damaging, the fact that it's coming in a very narrow pulse.
In less than a billionth of a second, the electrical intensity on Earth's surface becomes so hot, microchips fry, power lines overload, and the electric grid collapses.
Everything with microelectronics in it stops. Your car, your computer, the subway, there's no electricity. And if you think about it, if you don't have any electricity, you don't have anything in our infrastructure, do you?
It would change the game. It would change the world order.
Look around you and imagine what life would be like in a world without power. It's an electronic Armageddon.
A little scary. We can shut it off.
The nuclear warhead.
It's very quiet in here now. How many are familiar with EMPs and might have seen the last brief? I'll keep this short, but it was by popular demand. I'll mention a couple details on that. We're not talking about a large nuclear warhead. It might not even be a nuclear warhead. You could build an EMP in this room for 200 watt. It won't be powerful enough to leave the room, but it could fry everything in the room. This is very dangerous. It's becoming more common that this technology might be used, usually in small environments. But when one goes off in space like that, about 200 miles up, it would take out an entire continent. Every electronic device that's not shielded in that country, continent, would be fried. The estimated time in the U.S. to repair from a small thermonuclear bomb that goes off in space is 2 to 3 years. again, I'm trying to get you to understand the importance of my brief. Several reports I'll show you here say that the estimated number of deaths in the United States from one bomb going off in space, say North Korea fires one, is 70 to 90% of America. Not a single person killed from the blast. But the fact that we don't have electricity, we can't drive our cars, we can't get money out of the banks, we can't have food delivered to the stores, we can't go to work, we can't function at work. Society would stop. So this is a very serious topic. In general, this brief is not about EMPs because that's an apocalyptic scenario. I want to focus on short-term things you can do to prepare. It just happens that preparing for one is also preparing for the other. Let me continue with the next section. Could I get a show of hands of anyone who has experienced an outage of more than 5 days, no power in your area? Maybe a local ice storm or hurricane, something like that. It's not a fun experience. As you, I see 2 hands. As the time goes on longer for an outage, the impact gets greater very quickly. As supplies run out in stores, your ability to take care of essentials quickly diminishes. And just as this EMP showed, a billionth of a second, you go from having a world that's working fine to whatever you have on hand is all you have to live with until all this comes back. Could be, 2-3 hours, could be 2-3 years. So I'm presiding this brief in hopes that this will be shared with other people around the world that are right now having serious concerns of power problems in North America and Europe. In Ukraine right now, they're expecting 8 to 10 million people to have no power for the winter, and they're just flat out telling them, go to another country. You can't survive this for that long. So that being said, we're going to start the brief in a little more detail. Again, just trying to add a little humor here. You might as well be prepared. And in this case, that guy was not really prepared. Being prepared for outages of the time frame I'm going to focus on, which is from 2 days to 2 weeks, is very survivable. It takes very minimal amount of preparation, but it's very, very important to know what to do before it happens, because once it happens, which could happen 2 seconds from now, it's too late. There's no option to go to the store and buy things. Most likely, everything will be closed or out of stock until the electric comes back on, whenever that may be. As well, it'll be extremely dangerous to go to the stores under those conditions. There's some common reasons for long-term power outages. There's natural disasters, hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, asteroid collisions, lightning, tornado, solar storms, which is the exact same effect as an EMP, is a natural EMP. And then you have man-made disasters, wars, conflicts, cybersecurity, cyber attacks, terrorist attacks, EMPs, electrical grid failures, a very general category, but here we're talking about a human making a mistake that could damage a fragile system. Over demand of energy. If there's more people wanting energy than what is available on the grid, there's some redundancy built into most electrical systems, but that is quickly going away all over the world as governments and companies try to go more green. They're shutting down a lot of systems, from nuclear power plants to coal systems, and this is overextending the electrical systems, the electrical grid, causing a lot of problems. And most likely the next 2 years are going to have many more problems than we have right now. As I'm mentioning on the bottom, the risks of man-made disasters is increasing exponentially right now. So I really hope you all take something from this video of you can learn from. I have some tips, documents online that are available on the website, as well as I have some hand copies here for everyone at the end of the video. Excuse me, at the end of the presentation. Again, natural occurring events. Some are very localized, some are regional, some are entirely global. But they all have the same impact potentially of bringing down an electrical grid. Again, we're not focusing on the 2 to 3 hour outage in this briefing. Even 2 days is still very inconvenient, but not a major problem. It's after that, because most people have enough food in their house to survive 2 or 3 days. Once their power goes out and their electricity to their refrigerators, inability to cook, inability to buy things in a store, that's when things really get scary. And here again, regarding the previous videos, a little visual of some of the man-made risks. So there's basically 3 types of power problems that you can have. Blackouts, we're all familiar with short-term blackouts. There's power goes out because someone hit a telephone down the road, or a local regional grid, say the size of Padia, on a rare occasion might all go out due to some shortage of power. That's a low to medium risk, not a big deal. It's inconvenient, you might have to stay home, but everything still works exactly as normal. A brownout is, in general, a brownout is when the power is still on, but it's reduced voltage or amperage. Those can be done intentionally. They're usually announced. That's from maybe an area of the country that has more power demand than they have power available. So the electrical companies will make the decision, rather than shutting down half of the area, they just give half the power to each side. That has a very big concern with your electronic devices, because most of these circuits are very sensitive to voltage changes, and this can damage computers, phones, refrigerators, appliances. It's very important to shut your systems off during that time frame. It's also dangerous because a lot of us don't even realize it's happening. You may only notice this because a normally very bright white light is now very dim, or your computer suddenly starts losing internet connection, and maybe it's having some strange errors that pop up on the screen. So it's best to shut your equipment off during a brownout in order to not have it damaged. Interesting note, someone who's done computers and electronic repair for 25 years, most of your devices, when they get destroyed or damaged, it was working yesterday, and then today you turned it on and nothing happens. The damage and the reason it stopped working might be a motherboard, a power supply, many internal components, but almost always it's an accumulative damage that caused that to happen. There's been little spikes in the line over a period of time, and at some point those tiny little circuits on the board, some spark jumped and short-circuited something in that board. They're not worth repairing. Many times they can't even identify exactly what it is, but ultimately my point is damage to electronic devices is caused by exactly the conditions that happen during a brownout. The third type of an outage, which is a more long-term outage, we're talking many days or weeks or months, is, I'm using EMP as the example. At first it appears like your average 2-hour blackout. You don't know what happened, you woke up in the morning and there's no power. So I'll go into why it's important to know the difference, but this is extremely high risk that you are prepared before this happens. And again, you want to know what to do with your devices during this event. That's it. Yep. Here's a question. What do these 3 events have in common? I think you'll all be able to answer this by now. Long-term power disruptions, large-scale nuclear war, or an EMP attack. Answer, they're all, well, here it is. Each would bring an end to civilization due to the damage to the electrical grid. Whenever you hear news stories that talk about the electrical grid problems, your ears should really be listening carefully. You'll find these type of discussions are happening very, very commonly on every country in the world right now. There's a few comments confirming my statement earlier. These are recent comments saying that if an EMP hit, 2/3 of the U.S. population would die from the attack. U.S. Defense Secretary, 79% of Americans would cease to exist in 18 months. On a very positive note, there's a reason I'm in Thailand. Thailand is likely not to be impacted anywhere near as much. We have access to food, we have good infrastructure, we don't have a lot of the security problems, many other reasons. We are in one of the safest places in the world, in my opinion. But again, I suggest this might be very helpful to people elsewhere in the world not so fortunate. This was a recent notification in the UK that they are preparing for week-long outages, possibly next year, maybe sooner. But when the government suggests we're doing studies about something, there's a reason for it. Again, this is a little more confirmation of some of the other comments. Over 30 or 40 countries, I believe, are now having energy crises around the world. They're transitioning to solar, wind power, other supposedly more green sources. But the plans to do this are not necessarily well implemented to transition smoothly. They're shutting down a lot of systems long before they have an alternative solution for power. I do have some suggestions of how we can protect us personally. We'll get to that a little later. But I want you to just know this is not a local problem. This is a problem globally. I like the first comment, if I can clarify. In June, President of the United States declared the U.S. has major energy problems, and yet he decided this month to shut down, to order all the coal plants shut down, which is a huge percent of the remaining power in the U.S. That seems contradictory, and it shows that there's some conflict between the green agenda and the needs of people to have energy. This is a quick summary of what I'm trying to focus in on here today. It's showing power interruptions and how there's 4 classifications of power interruptions. The first one being a very minor inconvenience, outages of 30 hours. You don't need any preparation for it. It's helpful if you have some lights and candles and a little bit of food at home, but it's just a minor inconvenience, not a problem. Secondly, outages of 30 hours to 72 hours. That gets a little bit more risky as people start to run out of supplies. Keep in mind, traffic lights might not be working, police systems might be overwhelmed, hospitals, emergency systems, all kinds of secondary problems start to happen at this point. So it begins to get more serious. Third, outages of 3 days to 14 days become more severe exponentially each day. As people get more desperate, as most people live day to day, it becomes very serious quickly. A lot of services in society might start to break down. At first this sounds severe, but when you start to analyze that a lot of people, I think it's like 60% of the people in America are living paycheck to paycheck. What do you do when you don't have access to money after 7 days? Or your bank, the ATMs don't work. Banks won't give you money because they can't turn their computers on to know what your balance is. Again, very serious. The fourth type of outage, longer than 2 weeks, if it happens in a large area, for example, the EMP, which is continent size, it can be continent size, or country size, there are abilities to use EMPs in very small areas. They can use it for a single building, or they can use it as I showed, continent-wise. Even North Korea, which I'm sorry to pick North Korea, but it's been talked about in the news. They have 2 satellites that are flying over the U.S. They could have a small nuclear bomb in there, and those are potentially 2 EMPs. If something was to happen where the U.S. power grid went down for as little as 2 weeks, it could be an apocalyptic event. Secondary issues happen. It's not that the EMP itself would cause the problem, but when civil society breaks down, a lot of bad things happen. So I'm not going to discuss that. I don't want to be negative. I'm giving you information that can help you prepare for the first 3 categories, which are very survivable, very inexpensive to prepare properly for, and I hope I can help you with that today. So how do we do this? You need to have a plan, an emergency plan of where you're going to go, where you're going to keep your supplies, know what you need. Secondly, you need to prepare. You need to have your supplies before the event starts. It's never been more important than any other kind of accident or emergency before, because if it's a very large area, there will be no help. If it's a small area, a city, not a major problem. But if it's a very large area, whole nother ball game. So I'm suggesting you get everything you need, everything I mentioned in this list, before the event occurs. And essentially, it saves you a lot of money at the same time, because if you already have 2 months worth of food supply, for example, and water, inflation's killing us. I mean, inflation's going high around the world. Why not buy it now, have it in storage, and it'll cost more in 2 months, so you're doing yourself a favor in many ways. Stay informed is very important during an emergency. We all know that, but when we have no power, we have no radio, we have no internet, we have no phones, how do you do that? You have to find ways to connect, know locally what's going on, and have a battery-operated radio, for example. Know who to contact for a good source of information before an event happens. And you have to constantly reevaluate and adapt as the situation changes. The power outage after 3 or 4 days is no longer your main problem. Now it's the secondary impact of what that power outage caused that is really life-threatening. And finally, your attitude, your ability to stay calm and think clearly and understand what's going on is your best asset, I think. I'm going to run through this section very quick, and this is a repeat of what is in the TIPS document, but in more detail. The document itself is a 1-line summary, so you may want to think of some questions to ask after this, but if you follow me through this section, the pointers in the document will make more sense. So there's 3 sections: how to prepare, what to do during the outage, and what to do after. So it's a 15-item checklist. Nothing's that complicated, but a lot of it we wouldn't have thought of. We kind of talked about that. So where are you going to meet? You should have a place you've stored some supplies, something safe, something you could stay at long term. And where are you going to meet if you can't get there? Say you're on a trip, say you're at work and your wife or significant other are in another location and your kids are in another location and the power's gone, the phones are down. Do you all know where you're going to meet? That's critical. It's also good to have a second location. Say you have a vacation home in the mountains. You have to have a plan at that time too, because you never know when things would go wrong. Just a last comment is here: when your phone is not working, GPS is not working, calling them, tracking where you even are. How do you even get to someplace if you told them you're going to meet there when you don't have a GPS, the lights are out, and the roads are jammed with cars? So we all need water. You need water to survive. The average person needs 1 gallon or 3.75 liters of water per day. Water is heavy. You can't just put that in a backpack and have 3 days supply on you. So you have to have access to water to drink. You have to have access to water for a number of reasons. How are you going to flush your toilets? How are you going to wash your dishes? How are you going to take a shower? So there's multiple water systems that you need. One of the suggestions, you notice the power's out, it's been out for 2 hours, and you finally realize this is pretty serious, you can't get any news information. Fill your tub up with water, fill your buckets up with water. You can use that to flush your toilets for the next few days. You can gather rainwater outside if it's 5 or 6 days. There's a lot of shortcuts you can do that can save you from a lot of headache if this turns out to be a long-term outage. Understanding how to purify water is a big one too. YouTube video. Buy some purification tablets, drop it in water, so you're not getting dysentery or other problems. Food. We all need food. You can survive for 30 days without food, but your ability to function properly degrades quickly. So you want to make sure you have food that's edible. If you're on your 4th or 5th day of a power outage, your refrigerator is probably storing a lot of bad food by now. You want to eat the food in your refrigerator first. Keep a lot of ice in your freezers. Don't open the freezer more than you need to. It'll give you a couple extra days of keeping the food safe. Other things you want to do is stock up and think about how much food you eat and try to stock up and keep 1 month food, 2 months food. I'd say 1 month food is sufficient in Thailand because you may have access to food in Thailand, but you may not want to go out in a very risky area after a 5-day power outage. So here are some basic food items you might want to get: cans of tuna, oatmeal, dried foods, protein bars, things like that. Things are not perishable. A propane stove can be very, very helpful because how are you going to cook anything without power? Again, small tips: make sure it's in a well-ventilated area if you're going to use a stove of some kind. Communication devices. So we're used to using our PCs and our phones. If all that's down, you can recharge your phone. There's solar chargers you can get. There's something called a solar generator that's getting very popular now. Basically, it's a little control panel, and you can plug in your wall plugs. It has outlets for wall plugs. You can plug in your fan or your air conditioner. Well, wouldn't work in air conditioner, but your refrigerator, your computers. You can use your own power system, which is a solar panel that's connected to this control panel, and generate your own power to a limited degree. Depends on how big solar panels you buy, but it's completely adjustable and it's relatively inexpensive. You're talking maybe 6,000 baht. You can get a decent system that'll recharge your phones and devices. You can also buy a little portable phone charger that has a solar panel on it for like 200 baht. And a whole list of things that you can do that help keep your communications running. Ultimately, if you have batteries, like AA, AAA batteries, that's good for a few days, but beyond 2 weeks, you're probably out of batteries as well. That's why solar panels are far better. Also, this is a big one. Your car, while you may not be able to drive it because you've ran out of gas, and you can't go get to the gas station because the gas station's pumps are all electric, so they don't get gas and you can't pump gas. So you can use the battery in your car to recharge your phones. Little things like that are big help in these kind of emergencies. Keep a low profile. If you have power and you have food and water because you prepared, don't throw a big party. Keep a low profile because you don't want a riot with 25 other neighbors coming over. You want to be helpful if you can, but be very careful in this kind of situation. Even when you're cooking, there's suggestions of cooking on low heat so the smell doesn't get too strong and invite neighbors. Regarding protecting your electronic devices, UPS systems, uninterruptible power systems, are very well known. They come in all different qualities, but these help protect your electronic devices. And if the power goes out, sorry. If the power goes out, these are designed to, let's say, run a computer for another 4 hours or something like that. And they help clean up the bad voltage, keep voltage stable. So they're useful, but they're very short term. Some of them will last 15 minutes, some will last 2 or 3 hours. Very massive ones could last a day, but they're, 500,000 baht, something like that. So these are not the end solutions, but they do help protect your devices. Alternative power sources, I spoke on that a moment ago. There are several ways to do this. Having power packs, which is a small battery pack to recharge your phones, is the simplest short-term solution, but that might get 2 charges out of it, and then that's got to be recharged too. So inexpensive ways to at least get you through a few days. Some people would recommend larger generators. If you live in a house and you are anticipating long outages or have some reason to keep a generator, that's a good source of power, but again, that runs on gas, so you'd have to stock up on gas as well. I have this question comes up a lot about, will an EMP damage solar panels and will it damage other electronics? An EMP, because it has multiple frequencies, a huge range, it will damage a lot of equipment, maybe destroy most electronics. But in the case of solar panels that don't have a lot of small circuitry, it will probably reduce the performance, but it won't destroy them. I mentioned this earlier, just keep your your refrigerator full of ice. I'm surprised just by doing that and keeping it in small bags helps keep it a lot cooler and the refrigerator cooler, so I'm saving money, and if I need that ice for all kinds of reasons, it's already prepared. Keep your devices fully charged as much as possible, including your gas tank. A lot of people forget to check your flashlights and solar devices that charge. If you don't use them for 6 months, chances are they won't work when you need them. They need to be recharged every 2 or 3 months for them to stay effective. Medical supplies, how many of us need insulin or certain medications? Those might not be available either in emergencies. You should get a month's supply of those critical needs. Not necessarily medications, but all kinds of things, from first aid kit for things you can't anticipate to know how to do CPR, since those services might not be available. Have some cash on hand. One of the first things you're going to run out of is cash. A lot of people use credit cards, phones to charge. Those might not be available and quickly run into problems. You might want to start bartering with other valuables. I'd suggest you have some money, access to money on hand. Don't need a lot. You don't want to take too much risk carrying a lot out of the bank, but you should have some. Keep in mind, there's a lot of electronic devices that you don't think about that won't work. Everything from your passport, which has an RF chip in it, credit cards, all RF chip. One of the ways to protect against that is using what we call a Faraday bag. It's a shielded bag that protects against EMP, electromagnetic disturbances that could fry your equipment. Those are fairly inexpensive. I recommend you look into those. I'll be glad to give you information on those later. Lots of other small things that are personal for you. Do you need a lighter? Do you use candles? I mentioned a gas cooker. You need a fan if you're can't do well without air conditioning. Those are things you should think about. might have broken windows, vandalism, you might have all kinds of reasons to have repair kits. Try to stock up on all of this if you can. Again, Faraday bag. This is becoming a big thing to try to prepare against not just EMPs, but if you had all your information on your electronic devices, it becomes very important. And I went into this in far more detail in the last video, but EMPs don't have to be this big thing in the cloud or this nuclear weapon. It can be a very, very small item being used against a building in a terrorist attack, being used by militaries to take out an individual and happen to affect everybody in a local area. And every day, these are being used around the world. This is not something we have to worry about. Sometime it might happen in the future. The scenario I showed here wasn't the extreme where they actually used it in space, which has the most impact. But they do use it in a lot of situations around the world. Try to keep your vehicle full. As I said, if an EMP happens, it's too late. You may be able to go to the gas station and get gas for the next couple of hours, but after that, you're looking at long lines and shortages very likely never to be fixed, at least not for the duration of the outage. So if you have a good emergency plan, you have this tips list I mentioned. If you don't have a physical copy and your power is down, how are you going to know to reference it and know if you're doing everything on your checklist? I suggest you print it all out, give a copy to the family where you're going to meet, rendezvous points, etc. So that was all.
We're at noon already. Can you believe that?
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah. Our first talk went a long time. So you've got the checklist printed out, of course. So we cannot stay here forever at the Holiday Inn, and we do want to take a few questions and answers. So unfortunately,
this is fine. This is fine. What to do during the outage is largely related to power. You just want to shut off, disconnect anything that can be damaged by a blackout, brownout, and you can read the presentations. I put one on every table. I have some more to hand out to you, and it's also posted on the website.
Some of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to get a Faraday cage to put thumb drives and backup hard drives on, and I'm also really looking at buying, and they're very cheap on Lazada, these solar chargers you can plug your phone into. They're very cheap.
Yeah, Tucumb Mall has some, a large variety. So these products are very inexpensive, and most of us need these at some point anyhow, so why not get them when they're cheaper and they're available now, and have yourself prepared for those types of emergencies?
Yeah, I'm definitely doing it. They're really, really cheap. Who has never used Lazada? Lazada. Never used Lazada. Oh, only one person's putting their hand up. Oh, two. It's really, really good. You can book stuff, and unless it's cost $20,000, you can pay cash on delivery. They have really good, a huge variety of stuff you can order. It's an app you can put on your phone, or you can go to the website and book. I book something. I buy something from there every week. And they are genuinely excellent. And if you don't like it, you can send it back. You once sent something quite expensive back to Lazada, didn't you? A long time ago, years ago, something. Anyway, you sent part of his memory back as well. Sorry about that. All right, now let us try and have a few questions and answers. You wanted one earlier. I think we should start.
Thomas, I have a question about KeepPass. How do you copy the user ID and password when most websites don't show you what your password is? They only replace it with what you're typing with passwords.
That's very annoying to me when you can't, let's say you're a bad typer and you put in your password. Some of them have the option to unhide it, but a lot don't today, which is infuriating because I don't care if someone's standing behind me and no one's standing behind me. How do you fix that problem? You should know your own password. You have to log in manually. So in the case of building your database, you'll have to manually enter it. And then once you've created the database and you
basic, please. VPNs. You haven't recommended anything yet.
Actually, I did. I recommended Surfshark. Surfshark. I think it's really cheap. It's only about a couple of bucks, US dollars a month or something. So about $50 a year.
Well, that's going to be recommended.
No, we have, I mentioned a few more, but they're built into other security packages, services like a security suite. For example, AVG, Kaspersky, Norton, dozens of other services are out there.
Well, if you've got AVG, you can activate the VPN in AVG if you've got the full suite.
Now, your package may not have included a VPN. It depends on what you purchase, but they're available and they're very cheap, $2 to $5 a year sometimes for paid services. Those paid services offer a lot more features than the free services.
You talked about some of the email name it like you mentioned about some of the servers or the mail servers. You didn't mention Thunderbird.
Thunderbird is one of the better ones. I like it.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the more common ones. I didn't know if it's still considered a safe one.
I do. It's one of the safer ones. I use Thunderbird with a backup. That's the backend. That's the server online. But I also use Microsoft Outlook on my local box combined so that I download all my files and I keep them locally. Thunderbird is a very good one.
I was just going to comment on the gentleman who couldn't find his passwords. That would be a simple solution then when you're getting ready to do that would be to tell them whatever site it is you want to make it.
Yeah,
And
usually
that way you make a new one.
every site has some access methods to reset your password. You might have to follow that process, and in some cases you might have to call it and get it reset. Once you know it, you write it down on paper temporarily, and then you put it in your KeyPass program, and then go in the paper.
And the reason some of them don't show it on screen when you put the password in is because they're worried you're in like a internet cafe or in a public place and somebody's, trying to spot what password you're typing in. It happened to a friend of mine. They tried to, copy what he was actually typing.
But quite frightening to somebody like a dinosaur, me. The question is, if the governments know and they are planning for this, how come they're pushing electric cars when they could expect a power outage?
That's exactly what I'm referring to is how this is getting more dangerous all the time. Take California, for example. They have this major push that all cars have to be electric by 2035. It's mandatory. Yet now they're telling people they can't charge their cars during the day because they don't have enough power with the cars that are already electric to charge them. So this is what I mean, there's problems. Oh, it isn't? Maybe you're right. Tell me. Oh, I agree. I'm talking during the day. They have some restrictions. That's what I've heard.
I think we want to have a green morning sometime when we look at this whole question.
Yeah, exactly. This is a very good topic that needs a separate discussion. I use California as that example, but it's not specific to California. This is just a problem in many areas where they certainly don't have the capacity to go to all electric cars at this point, and I doubt they will by 2035.
Anyway, if anybody's wants to talk on that subject of green and how we're going on the greening thing, please contact me or send us people.
Hello, very good talk. I'm just curious, how many people have had a security issue with Wi-Fi or email or anything?
I can tell you for sure, 95% of you have. Probably a higher percentage than that. You don't know about it because you haven't seen money taken out of your bank directly, but your data has been stolen, your accounts have been compromised. You can go to many websites and verify that yourself. Just put in your email and certain information. If you look online, it's not your fault. It's the fact that there's some good hackers out there. A lot of websites are not secure. Virtually every major website, doesn't matter if you're talking about Google or Amazon or U.S. Social Security Department, they've all been hacked, and literally millions, and probably every record out there is now available on the black market. So unless you change your passwords regularly, you're almost certainly vulnerable. So that's another recommendation, is try to change your passwords every 90 days. KeyPass program allows you to do that very easily and quickly, while a manual system is more difficult.
I just got a couple of comments on some of the things you advised everybody on. Everything you said was true, but there's a couple of warnings to throw in. For example, with regards to VPN, if you control both ends of the VPN, you're secure. But if you only control one end, like the end on your phone, and you have no idea where the other end is, that can be an issue. So if you're sending, if you're not sending confidential information, like you're using to bypass geo-blocking for watching videos, fine. But if you're sending confidential information or doing regular stuff, and you don't know what's at the other end, whoever runs that VPN knows where you are, where you're going, and can track all the information that's going through it. For example, Kaspersky is a Russian company, so everything you do through a Kaspersky VPN could be being tracked by the Russians. So just be aware of what you're sending through a VPN that you don't control both ends of, because you can actually maybe get yourself in more trouble than not using one in that case. The second one deals with password managers. I'm not a fan of password managers. The big reason for that is that somebody wrote that program. So I could easily write a password manager that does everything that you showed, but I could add an extra step in there where it's like, okay, not only am I going to take that password and save it for you to use, I'm going to send me a copy so now I can hack your account. So you want to make sure you trust the program you're using. Your other suggestion is probably better using an encrypted drive, using Excel and doing it that way, versus using an app that's designed specifically for that. And with regard to what Ren said about keyboard loggers and capturing passwords, Control-V is the same thing. They all have access to the clipboard, so they can still pull from there, so it's sort of a moot statement.
I appreciate your input. You brought up some very good questions. I didn't go to anywhere near enough detail on all these. Each one of these topics could be hours of talk. Regarding VPN, it provides additional security to have a VPN. You have to know if it's end-to-end. For example, if you're in a business and you go point to point from my server here to a server inside the network, I know it's secure from point to point. Most VPNs are set up to go from your box, your PC or phone, to another location around the world. That's partial security, protecting against anybody trying to steal your data locally and scan your network. If it's on the other end, it's unlikely that someone's trying to steal your data, but it could be there. Regarding password managers, there's risk to everything, but it's far more secure to have the password program. The Kaspersky program is ran, company is now based out of UK. And I wouldn't trust using anyone's cloud service. That's just me, because it's in the cloud. Yes, it's encrypted. If they get hacked, they still can't get my data. But the service provider technically has access to the servers for every server in the world. If they manage that server, they have access to it. I use the local password, the local system on my computer. Since you're using auto-generated passwords, that works much better. And the Control-V does work, and it is copied with cut and paste. You're right, it's in cache. But these programs erase it from cache within 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds to cut and paste it once erased. So there's advantages to that.
And I think there were a lot of advantages to this morning. Who didn't learn anything today? Right? So we all learnt something. I hope you'll action some of it, like electronic inheritance, you know? You just take 1 or 2 things away from this, like not using a public Wi-Fi, etc., and it's a morning well spent. And I want to thank Bud for his genuine, huge expertise on cybersecurity and imparting so much information in one morning. It's a record.
It's a little hard to focus. Thank you. It's very difficult to focus when I know so many more details about this, and just try to give you the high-level view of what is helpful. I hope I was able to provide, some helpful information. You can always ask me questions in more detail another time.
So Bud will hang around if you've got got some more questions. And this is fun. He's got so much information, it almost like overwhelms him trying to boil it down to simple steps. I'm taking everything. Right. Cool. Couple of